Level 1. The clean hands. The number is $340,000. It's sitting in front of you in 6 separate figures across 6 separate spreadsheets, and your job, the only job anyone has explained to you, is to make it disappear into something that looks like a restaurant supply company in Guadalajara. You are 26 years old. You have an accounting degree from a university that mattered. You have $41,000 in student debt and an apartment with a broken ceiling fan and a cousin who made one phone call and told you the work was clean, mostly, and paid better than clean. You took the meeting. The man who hired you wore a watch that cost more than your car and spoke in a register so calm it felt engineered. He did not explain what the organization did. He explained what you would do. The distinction was intentional. You understood it and accepted it, and told yourself that understanding it meant you were in control of what you were agreeing to. You were not in control of anything. The first job takes you 11 hours. You split the $340,000 across 18 shell entities, went it through 3 layers of legitimate-looking invoices for goods that were never shipped, and land it clean in 2 operating accounts that will never be audited because the auditors are managed by someone 2 levels above you who you will never meet. It works. They pay you $8,000 in cash in an envelope that smells faintly of something you don't investigate. You deposit $3,000. You keep $5,000 in a shoebox. You tell yourself this is temporary, a bridge. You have a plan for after. Everyone here has a plan for after.
Level 2. The structure builder. 6 months in, and you are not temporary. You've processed $4.2 million across 11 operations, and you haven't made a single traceable error. They know this because they checked, not your work, but you, your bank records, your relationships, your routine. You were audited before you knew you were being audited. You passed. A man named Rolando comes to see you. He is not the top. He is not close to the top. But he is the first person who knows your name and the organization's internal structure simultaneously. And that alone moves him into a category of danger you haven't encountered before. He tells you they want to build something more permanent, not just moving money, constructing the architecture to move money at scale, continuously, invisibly. Layered holding companies, import-export fronts, real estate vehicles in 3 countries, a construction firm in Monterrey that is also real, that builds real buildings, because real revenue is the best cover for false revenue. You'll design it. You'll own it. You'll be the only person who understands all of it, end to end. That, Rolando explains, is your value and also your vulnerability. He says both things with the same expression. You build it over 4 months. It is genuinely elegant work. If the underlying capital were legitimate, it would be the kind of structure that gets written about in financial journals. You clear $340,000 your first full year. Your student debt is gone. You move apartments. The ceiling fan works. You stop thinking of this as temporary sometime around month 8. You don't notice when it happens. That's how it works.
Level 3. The indispensable one. There's a problem in Culiacan. A mid-level plaza operator has been skimming. $200,000 over 4 months, siphoned through a vendor account you built, but he corrupted. The discrepancy is yours to find and yours to explain. You find it in 6 hours. You present your analysis to Rolando in a single page. The operator is identified by transaction pattern, not by name. You don't know his name. You don't want his name. You hand over the page. 3 days later, Rolando returns your call. The problem, he says, has been resolved. You understand what that means. You don't ask. That moment,
That specific silence on your end of the phone is a threshold you cross once and cannot uncross. You didn't cause it. You didn't order it. You ran numbers and wrote a memo. But you understand now that your numbers have weight beyond accounting. Your numbers have consequences that accounting school did not prepare you for. You sit with it for a weekend. Then you go back to work on Monday. Your justification, assembled quietly and without drama, you didn't know for certain what resolved meant. And even if you did, the man was stealing from people who would have found him eventually regardless. You just made the finding faster. This logic is not airtight. You know it isn't. You use it anyway. Your access expands. You now see cash flow summaries from 5 plazas. You understand the organization's revenue, $80 to $120 million annually through the channels you manage, with significant additional flow through structures you don't yet touch. You are 28 years old, and you understand the financial architecture of a transnational criminal organization better than anyone except the man at the top who built the first version of it 20 years ago. That man has heard your name. Rolando tells you this like it's a gift. It is. It is also a leash. Level 4. The Architect. You have an office now. Not in a building associated with anything, a floor of a legitimate financial consulting firm in the city, a firm the organization owns through 4 removes, where you sit with 2 assistants who know pieces of what you do and not the whole, and who have been selected for the same quality you were selected for. They are smart, they are quiet, and they have something to lose. You manage $400 million in annual flow. The number would have been incomprehensible to you 3 years ago. Now it's administrative. You think in structures, not amounts. The amount is just the variable. The structure is the work. You've made your second major compromise by now, and your third. They came closer together than the first one. That's how the escalation works. The gaps between decisions shrink because each one makes the next one smaller. A journalist in the Capitol is investigating a real estate firm that is a Layer 2 shell in one of your structures. You are asked for a risk assessment. Not what to do about the journalist, just the risk. You write a clean analysis. You quantify the exposure. You include mitigation options. Close the entity, move the assets, create documentation distance. The journalist stops reporting on it 6 weeks later. You don't know why. You don't ask. But you notice you don't ask. Your reputation inside the organization is now architectural. You are the person who built the thing. Replacing you wouldn't just require finding someone with your skills. It would require someone who could learn a system that exists only in your head and in documents stored in locations only you fully understand. That's job security. That's also a cage. You've started thinking about those the same way. Level 5. The Consigliere. They fly you to a meeting. Private terminal. Single engine to a ranch in a state you will not record having visited. There are men there with weapons that are not concealed. They're not hiding them because this is a place where concealment is for guests, and you are not being treated as a guest. You are being treated as something more specific, an asset being introduced to its owner. The man at the head of the table is not what films taught you to expect. He is 61 years old. He drinks water. He asks you 3 questions about your structure, specific, technical questions that reveal he understood the architecture before you explained it. And then he listens to your answers with the full attention of someone who has made a career of reading the gap between what people say and what they mean. He tells you that you will now report directly. That sentence rearranges your entire internal geography in about 4 seconds. Rolando is moved sideways, not punished, moved. This is how the organization manages transitions. Nobody disappears unless disappearing is the point. Rolando becomes a regional supervisor. He shakes your hand when it happens. The handshake means several things, and you understand all of them. Direct access to the top means two things simultaneously. You are trusted completely, and you are watched completely. These are not in tension. They are the same thing expressed differently. You now know things that are not financial: operational structure, key relationships, which government officials are managed and how, which competing organizations are tolerated, and which are being quietly suffocated. You know too much to leave. You knew this was coming. You let it come. Your annual take is $1.8 million, distributed across accounts in 4 countries. You have a house that is technically owned by a trust, that is technically owned by a holding company, that is technically legitimate. You have a car and clothes and a life that looks from the outside like a successful private consultant. From the inside, it looks like a room with no door.
Level 6. The operator. 3 years at the top tier of access, and the nature of the work has changed without being reclassified. You don't just structure money, you structure decisions. When the organization considers a major move, a new corridor, a political relationship, a response to a competitive threat, you are in the room. Not because you have operational authority, because you understand what everything costs and what everything produces, and nobody in a room full of dangerous men wants to be the one who didn't account for the math. Your advice is taken, consistently. That has a gravitational effect you didn't anticipate. When your advice is consistently taken, the advice becomes policy, and the policy produces outcomes, and the outcomes have your fingerprints on them, even when your name is nowhere. A corridor decision you analyzed and approved added $60 million in annual revenue and cost 11 lives in territorial conflict. You knew the territorial conflict was probable. It was in your risk assessment. You labeled it operational friction. That phrase let you write it without feeling it. You feel it now, occasionally, not always. The occasions are becoming less frequent. The man at the head of the table is older now. He trusts you in the way powerful men trust tools they've used long enough to become extensions of themselves, completely and without affect. He does not express gratitude. He expresses continued access. That is the currency at this level. You have started having a recurring thought that you don't share with anyone. You understand this organization well enough to dismantle it, not destroy it, dismantle it, surgically. Collapse specific structures in a specific sequence, and the whole thing comes apart. You think about this the way you think about other theoretical problems, clinically. You don't do anything with the thought. Level 7. The shadow. There are decisions that happen, and there are decisions that you make, and nobody knows the line between them anymore, including you. The organization runs. It is large and old and metabolic. It processes money and violence and relationships and fear the way a body processes food, automatically, without requiring the brain to intervene on every function. You are not the brain. You are something harder to name. The architecture, maybe. The logic underneath the logic. You are 51 years old. You have not seen your family in 3 years, not because of danger, because the person they remember and the person you are no longer share enough surface area to make the visit functional. You tried once. The dinner lasted 2 hours. Your sister looked at you the way people look at something they can't identify. You understood her. You can't be understood back. The things you carry at this level are not secrets. Secrets are discreet. What you carry is more like weather,
a permanent atmospheric condition of knowledge that has no outlet and nowhere to go, and cannot be shared with anyone who exists in a world without bars. You are not unhappy. That is the most unsettling part. You expected, at some level, to be unhappy. You are very far from the person who took an envelope of cash from a shoebox and told himself it was temporary. That person is not dead. He is simply at such a distance that you'd need equipment to see him. Level 8. The Ledger. You have stopped counting years, not because you've lost track, because the counting stopped mattering at a point you can't precisely locate, somewhere after the 7th year, when the question of duration became abstract. The man at the head of the table died of a cardiac event 14 months ago. Natural, genuinely natural. The irony of that is not lost on you. The transition was orderly because you managed it. You built the succession architecture 2 years before it was needed, because that's what you do. You think structurally, and structure includes mortality. When the moment came, the right people received the right documentation and the right authorities and the right access. The organization did not lurch. It exhaled and continued. They replaced him with a man who is capable and aggressive and who calls you 3 times a week and takes your counsel because he is intelligent enough to know what he doesn't know. You are not the head. You are what the head rests on. The organization now processes approximately $800 million annually through structures you designed or approved. It has survived 2 major cartel wars, 4 government transitions, and 1 serious federal investigation that concluded without indictment because the documentation it encountered was airtight. Your documentation. You sit on a terrace in the early morning. The city below is waking up. Trucks, light, ordinary human movement in every direction. You watch it with something that is not detachment, but is not connection either. You think about the restaurant supply company in Guadalajara, the first job, $340,000 and 11 hours of work, and an envelope that smelled like something you didn't investigate. You think, if you'd known, what you'd have done differently. And you arrive, as you always do, at the same conclusion. Not that you would have walked away, but that the walk-away window was smaller than it appeared and closed faster than you noticed, and by the time you thought to check whether it was still open, it had been sealed for years. You are not trapped. Trapped implies a desire to leave. You simply have nowhere else to be that makes sense at this altitude. The ledger balances. It always balances. That's the only thing you are ever sure of.